Call the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission to order. Please stand with me, please. I'll lead the prayer and Richard will lead the pledge. Bow with me, please. Heavenly Father, we again thank you for this day and the blessings you've given us and the opportunity again to serve our fellow man. And we pray, Heavenly Father, that you'll be with us today and give us the understanding minds, Heavenly Father. We'll have the wisdom to make the right decisions. We pray you just continue to be with us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Amen. Face the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. Call roll, please, ma'am.
Rhonda Allen. Richie Bolin.
Here.
Veronica Buchanan.
Here.
Gary Farley.
Here.
Will Jordan.
Here.
Mike Cush.
Here.
Jeff Phillips.
Present.
Steve Sandlin. Mike Vaught.
Here.
Vincent Windrow. And Craig Lynch.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Yes. Before we get started and everything, I just want to take a moment to introduce a new planner we have on staff. We have Eric McMillan. He comes to us from Geauga County, Ohio, which is, I guess, around Cleveland. Is that correct? Yeah. And he just started last Wednesday, and he's getting settled in. He's going to be our GIS planner, handle a lot of our mapping needs and various other aspects that we have with the planning going on. But very happy to have Eric. Just wanted to take a minute just to introduce him, and you'll be talking with him more as the time and days go on. So, Eric, welcome.
Glad to have you, Eric. All right, I'll entertain a motion on our minutes.
Chairman, I move that they be approved as mail.
Second.
Second.
All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Nothing withdrawn or deferred.
No, sir.
Waiver request. Teresa Dunaway, 5 waiver requests.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. We have 2 waiver requests today. The first one is a piece of property located near the end of River Road, and you do have staff comments in your agenda packets, which extends off the west of Sulphur Springs Road. The proposed parcel is about 0.85 of an acre in size. The applicant is proposing to create a new lot in order to place a new single-family dwelling on the property. They want to create this lot because there's other existing single-family homes on the total property, which is 75 acres, and they're unable to get a conditional use permit for another house. Since the proposed parcel is less than 5 acres in size, obviously one of our requirements for the subdivision regulations is a fire hydrant within 1,000 feet. Unfortunately, there's one not too far from it in the Avalon subdivision. It's about 12 to 1,300 feet away from the property. And the line that is out there, however, could support another hydrant, but the applicant was asking for this waiver since there was one that was fairly close. Again, this is just for one single-family dwelling. This is not any kind of a large development or anything like that. Ms. Dunaway is here representing the request, and we can answer any questions that you may have.
How close did you say it was?
It's about 1,250, 1,300 feet, roughly.
There used to be a house on this spot,
That's
which
right.
I didn't realize they had a problem with it because I guess it's been too long ago, to 7 or 8 years since the old house burnt down, I guess, and stuff. And this is a family member moving right there on the part of the
Yes.
Jones property. They've been there forever. No other questions. I'll make a motion to approve.
Anyone have questions? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Just approved. Alan Jakes, there's waivers.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is a piece of property located off of Bowen Road. As some of the planning commissioners may recall, that this was a subject of a lawsuit between the applicant and another party. At one point, the county was involved in this lawsuit as well, but the county was ultimately dismissed out of the lawsuit. The subject tract, as you see on the front page of the comments, you can kind of see where where I have site on the property. That's really the tract in question. All the tracts already exist, but currently this tract has no access except to Bowen Road. But in an effort to settle the lawsuit, the applicant would like the subject tract to access an existing 50-foot easement that accesses West Trimble Road. The problem with that is that the existing easement already has 3 tracks, and as you're familiar, the subdivision regulations do not allow more than 3 by right. Anything more than 3 tracks has to be brought to the Planning Commission. Also, about a year or so ago, you'll recall that we changed our subdivision regulations to require any kind of a easement that accesses more than 3 tracks has to be built to county standards. So what the applicant is asking is that they be allowed to use this existing fourth track to access the existing easement to West Trimble Road. The waiver for the number of tracks on the easement, a waiver from actually making the easement more than what it is now, just not to have to make it to the county standard. And since this would have to be platted eventually with the easement and everything, that the fire hydrant waiver would kick in. So he's asking for those 3 waivers. Mr. Jakes is present, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions?
Has the lawsuit been settled, or what's the status there?
I think Mr. Jakes or Mr. McCrary could probably answer that question a little better than I could. I don't think it's been settled yet, no, but they could probably give you more details.
Mr. Jakes,
If you come up to the
come
podium.
forward, please.
I do know this has been going on for years now, and this seems like the best way to settle this.
Yeah, it has been going on for about 4.5 years. Basically, what's happened is once we finally got a judge that would hear it. It took us about 3 years to get a judge that would actually hear it. And once they heard it here in Rutherford County, my side won. Then it was sent to the appeals court. The appeals court ruled that it needs to be sent back and started all over. So in all of that, we've been about 4.5 years. And basically, this would satisfy the lawsuit. None of these people that they have a problem with using Bowen Road would have to use Bowen Road. The variance that we're asking for is only for the one person who still now has to use part of Bowen Road to get in and out of his house.
And this is a house that's already there and people are living in it currently. It's not for new construction or anything like that. It's just for a house that's already there. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
Sean Garrison is a Murfreesboro Police Department. He lives in what used to be my son's old house, and that's the house we're trying to get the variance for.
And also the fire.
Yes.
But,
Except when they eventually have to plat this with that fourth easement on the, or excuse me, fourth lot off the easement, that kicks in that provision of the subreg, so.
anybody familiar with all this? What's the answer? What do you think?
I mean, from staff standpoint, I mean, we're comfortable with the request. I mean, it's really just trying to solve a bad situation.
Go ahead.
I'd like to hear from Josh on before
I'll tell you what I know about the case. Originally, when the case was filed, I think originally the county wasn't a party. The county was brought in as a party at some point fairly early on in the case, as I recall. And then the county was dismissed from the case at the trial court level. When it went up to the Court of Appeals, the county wasn't even involved in the appeal, as I recall, because
That's
the
correct.
county had been dismissed. And there's some kind of remand, I'm aware of that, from the Court of Appeals. I don't know exactly what the nature of the existing dispute is between Vaught and is that it, Jakes and the other party, because the county's now out of it. So the county has not been brought back in, and to my knowledge, with the remand, the county is not brought back into the case. So there's still an existing ongoing dispute of some type between the two private parties. The county's not involved in it any longer.
So if we pass this or don't pass this
I
today,
don't think
the
what
county
you
has
do
no.
affects the suit vis-a-vis the county
Okay.
either way. Now, I don't know what how it may affect their private dispute,
Well,
but it doesn't affect the county.
I'm looking at on the
Right.
county side right now. That's why I asked that question.
I have a question for you or Mike, either one. My father was born up this road. I mean, at one time it was a public road, so to speak. And actually, I guess Stan, my brother, still has a tract that technically could be accessed up this road. Now, that's not how he has recently gotten into it. And the road used to travel all the way through to Highway 96 at one time. And Larry knows what I'm talking about. Now, at what point does it cease to be a public road? Why is it not now a public road when it was recognized as one? I mean, I remember traveling it back in the 60s or 70s, with my father, and it was in bad shape. The county wasn't keeping it up at the time. but why isn't it still a public road? Or how does it cease to become a public road? Either one of y'all, or has it? And I'm not trying to get in a court case here,
Say
but
me hurry, either one of them grab the
I'm
microphone.
curious as to where we are on it.
Okay, what was your question to start with?
How does it had public access at one time. I mean, post World War II, I know people that lived up that road. So how does it cease to become public access?
I guess when the judge ruled, it would be my guess. I don't know.
Well, you brought up a real good question, and I've had people tell me there's no way that this can happen for the last 4.5 years. But basically, the vault, the counterpart of this is arguing that it's not a public road. It's never been a public road. So when it was ruled on here in the local court, Judge Harris ruled that it was a public road that we never even put on a defense. After they got through testifying, he ruled that they had proved it was a public road. So it was stopped at that point. But when it was sent to the appeals court said they didn't think that it had been proved it was a public road. So as to the answer is whether this is a public road or not, that's still a question, that somebody someday is going to have to or get an easement back through there. There's several other people back there on Bowen Road that presently have land that they can't get to.
That's another reason I was asking. I knew there were multiple tracks up this road.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Beside the lawsuit, Doug, this could have been approved administratively if it was less than three or less.
If it had been 3 or
lots.
less, they probably still would have had to done a plat or something.
Besides
but,
this not meeting our criteria of 3 or less without coming to this body, is there a negative to doing this? I mean, you've got 2 families paying legal fees, going to court, and we can settle this for the most part, maybe not forever, because somebody else may come up, but we can help this young man who's bought this house up here out, and all of a sudden he doesn't have a legal access to it. That's a nightmare for somebody to be in, But besides a lawsuit, I don't see a reason not to do this.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it just without the lens of the lawsuit, I mean, this is really no different than other requests like this we've seen. So,
Would the water line support a fire hydrant though?
not according to Consolidated from the information they provided us.
Okay.
So if we're ready, I'll make a motion to approve the full list of variances.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, to approve all the list of variances that Doug mentioned. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Plat and bond extensions, Staghorn. One do you want?
I'll take it. Excuse me. We have 2 plat extensions for Staghorn and Prince Oaks. We're doing Staghorn first. I don't want to do them together. Both are the same thing. They're asking for extensions due to the economic situation and haven't sold the houses yet.
Y'all do them both at the same time?
Yeah, I would. So moved.
Okay, have a motion to approve and have a second. Second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Submitted for preliminary approval, Manor Farm reapproval.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you stated, Manor Farms, located off of Central Valley Road, preliminary plat of 52 lots on about 31 acres. Developers T&A Properties, engineers Huddleston Steel, school zones Wilson Elementary, Siegel Middle, and Siegel High School. Mr. Engineer.
As stated, this is a preliminary that was approved earlier, and they've asked for reapproval, again, because they haven't started the construction out there. I need to point out that lot 54 there is less than 5 acres, so we'll need a variance for that. They've got it the first time, but it would have to go along with this approval. In addition to that, the access to it is a private easement along lot lines 49 and 50 there for their homeowner association to do the maintenance on the easement. So they'll need those 2 variances to go along with the approval for the plat. We did do them the first time we approved the plat, but they just need to be redone also if we decide to reapprove it.
So there are no changes?
There's no changes, exactly as was designed.
And it still meets
Our
current criteria.
That's correct.
All right, questions? Your motion?
Motion to approve.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion say aye. No? Motion carries.
Bill, are they gonna start doing anything out there now?
When we talked to them, when they came in with this, I asked them that, excuse me. Their comment is one I've heard from others, we hope to. And it depends on who you talk to. Some people think the market will open in 3 months, and some think it'll be quicker.
Do you want to make comment? If you want to make comment.
It's just real quick.
As far as construction out there,
Name?
David Travis, sorry about that. But we've got our first coat of paving on. We're ready to pull permits here as soon as I can get a few things satisfied with my water lines and this meeting here.
Talk
So,
to him, he'll take care of it all for you, right?
well, I was going to twist on his arm a little bit.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're over Lewistown?
Lewistown.
Okay, Lewistown.
Yes, Lewistown, Section 1, Phase 2, final plat located off of Rock Springs Midland Road. It's a 39 lots on 18.7 acres. D&M Excavating LLC is the developer. Engineering is SEC. Mr. Engineer.
This is a new phase, it's a new file for us. We haven't had one of these in a while, so, but it meets our requirements, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, questions? Like you say, we hadn't had one in a while. Meets all requirements.
This is a step.
Yes.
Step system, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Questions? Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Site.
Yeah, I thought this was on Sorry.
Okay, submitted for site plan review, Rutherford County Baptist Church.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is Rutherford County, as you stated, Rutherford County Baptist Church. Should be the last plan you have down there. Located off of Seminary Road. This is an existing church building that they've been in here before over the last few years. They came in originally a few years back for their main building and then made an expansion. What they're wanting to do now, as you can see there's a shaded a building. They want to put in a small building there for Sunday school space, that kind of thing. As far as the site plan's concerned, it pretty much, we had a number of comments that we submitted to them, and they have met those. I don't see anywhere on here where it had anything about the building height. I don't expect it to be over 35 feet, but that's something they'll just need to make sure is on here, that we have verification of that. Because the fact that it's not for sanctuary space, it does not require any additional parking. Their parking that they do have is adequate for the spaces that they need. So with that, I don't have any other comments on it except to just indicate the building height. Mr. Enoch Jarrell with the Huddleston Steel Engineering, he's the project engineer on this particular site plan, is present. At least I think, yeah, he's still here. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
This is a portable building, is that right?
I believe that's correct.
For
Yes.
storage.
What's
For
it?
storage purposes.
Well, it's going to be for Sunday school space,
Okay.
classroom edition, basically. Mhm.
Okay. Questions? Everything's okay?
Yeah, everything's in.
Approve it.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Keep a second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, Doug, we got budget presentation.
Yes, it's that time of year again where we present our budget to you. We had our department head meeting with the mayor back in January, not a one-on-one, but just all the department heads met with Mayor Burgess as well as the finance director, Ms. Lisa Nolan, and kind of just gave an overview of the budget year. Since that time, we've been completing our budget, and we had a meeting with our budget committee this past Wednesday. I'd like to thank the committee members for their help with this. It was Mr. Jeff Phillips, Ms. Veronica Buchanan, Mr. Vincent Windrow. I'm missing the fourth person.
Rhonda.
Rhonda. Yes, thank you. Sorry, Rhonda. Not at all. No indication. Just my memory's gone. And Mr. Farley, I know you weren't able to come, but I know
I
you.
was out of
I know you would have been had you been able to. Just want to go over just the kind of the high points of the budget. The sheet I'm going to be referring to is going to be this one right here. It's one of the 8.5 by 14s. What I'm going to do is kind of go down that last, there's 4 columns of numbers there, and I'm going to go down that last column, the Department Request 2010-11. Basically, what our instructions were from the mayor's office and the finance department was just take last year's budget, make any needed minor changes, if you will, and then submit that. As you go down the list, really any changes I put in bold. As you see under the longevity pay, that did go up just a little bit, just because a couple people who weren't eligible for that have become eligible. Board and committee member fees you see has gone down from our last year's request of $40,000 down to $36,000. That's a direct result of taking the membership down from 15 to 11. Excuse me. So that actually gives us enough funding right there for both the BZA, the Planning Commission, and one extra meeting of the Planning Commission if necessary. Going down the list, of course, Social Security, state retirement, employee dependent insurance, those changed just a little bit based on our salary figures, as well as employee Medicare. Dues and memberships did go down just a little bit. The big reason that went down was our MPO dues, Metropolitan Planning Organization out of Nashville. Those dues are remaining static from last year. We don't have to put any program any funds in for an increase, so that did come down just a little bit. Maintenance agreements was pretty much the one that really went up the highest. During our budget committee meeting, the question was asked if there's a possibility of looking at maybe different maintenance agreements since our copy volume has decreased. We're looking into that. We actually have a phone call into our representatives with those individuals who represent those companies, and we haven't heard back yet, but that is as high as it should be. We're hoping that we might be able to trim that cost down some. Really, that's the majority of the changes. I will say out of the consultant line item, you'll see under 308, the cost for the consultant will come directly out of the development tax fund. It won't actually be reflected in our budget, which is why you don't see anything there for consultants. So overall, what you're seeing at this point is from our amended budget of 09-010, which you see in that second column of figures, we've actually been able to pare down our budget just a little bit, about $10,000. So that's the expenses as we see them at this point. Just kind of going through some of the other materials that you have. The other spreadsheet that's included with your agenda material kind of lists the actual expenditures and budgeted expenditures by fiscal year from fiscal year 01-02 to the present. That kind of gives you an idea of how the spending and budgeting has changed over the last several years. I will point out those last 2 columns of the budgeted expenditures. You'll see that overall we've got a decrease, and this is just operational expenses, of about almost 3%. So it has gone down just a little bit. The remaining items on your tables there with the budget, of course, we have on the very front, we've got these sheets here. This is kind of go again into the operational expenses, kind of more of a breakdown, just for your benefit, just to see what we have been spending and how that all breaks down. Our revenue estimate worksheet, which is the 3rd page, you'll see that basically what we've done, if we've taken our 6-month figures from July to December of 2009 and just doubled those figures, that's a fairly good amount lower than what we were expecting and what we have seen in the past. But honestly, with the amount of activity we've seen, it's not surprising. But just to point that out. And then the last 8.5 by 11 page is our 5-year capital plan. We've been given the mandate, if you will, no new computers, furniture, anything like that. Most of the major pieces of equipment, I'd say all the major pieces of equipment that we have, as far as our big copiers, wide format scanners, and all that, are in pretty good condition, and we shouldn't have to change those out with any luck anytime soon. So we've been able to kind of push any new expenditures off into the future. So with that, that's our budget presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. That's kind of the quick overview of it. So,
questions?
Doug, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. How you doing? Doug, the plan, like you mentioned here, you know, all the equipment coming on with the plan. The plan's projected to go in effect, I know when it's done and when it's approved, but projected What's the time frame?
You're talking about the comprehensive plan? Okay, at this point, we're projecting the comprehensive plan being done late spring, early summer, May, June-ish, in that area. And then the regulations really starting right after that, the regulations update, and that taking about a year. That's our general time frame at this point.
Well, one thing I know we're all watching, especially on the budget committee, and I'm so fortunate to be on the county commission budget committee. It's just a barrel of fun. The one thing we don't want to cut ourselves short here in the planning commission, though, is with this comprehensive plan being introduced and coming in, that we have all the tools that we need to not cut ourselves short. And that's one thing that I'm wanting the department to make sure of, that we have those tools. And if there's something that we've got to have, I mean, we're not setting ourselves back, because this county's going to continue to grow at whatever pace. Whether it's right now where we're kind of slow, or we're already starting to see building going on right now, and so it's starting to come up again. So your comments on that, like I said, I know what we're looking at in budgets, and we're trying to toe the line, but with doing a comprehensive plan and doing everything that we're doing, we don't want to cut ourselves short.
Sure, and I appreciate you saying that. I guess to answer that question, of course, the comprehensive plan will come up with a list of recommendations, which will have implementation strategies associated with them. It's not going to be something where we just take the whole thing and just start to do everything day one. We'll have to kind of work into that. I think a lot of what we're really needing at this point, and I think we have, is our personnel, and I think we have very competent personnel to handle those recommendations. Any new equipment or those kind of things, I think we'll just have to evaluate at that time. Whenever that time comes up. At this point, I don't think there's anything that we're just lacking right now that we would absolutely have to have in order to put the plan into practice. Okay. Now, again, not knowing what's all going to come out of the plan, we could end up approving something. I look at it and be like, wait a minute. Turns out we need to make an amendment or something. But I don't anticipate that at this point. I think that we've got very competent staff that can handle a lot of the recommendations that are going to be coming out of that. So, okay.
I have a separate question, Doug, on the 5-year capital budget plan. The cutoff, Epps Mill Road, Armstrong Valley, and Jefferson Pike, that's Central Valley and Jefferson Pike that are listed there. Those are projects similar to the Hoss Hill Pike project that we did. How are those funded too? Second question.
Well, you want to handle that one?
County general or some special?
The roads are funded in different ways. The Hoss Hill Pike was a combined project with the city and county funds being in it. Some of the road projects are city, county, you might have state and even federal monies in it. So each one is considered separately and trying to put the best pocket of money together to do those projects.
Yeah, most of these would be several of these would be strictly county.
Right. It would be difficult probably to get the city to participate in these projects the way they're listed here, because they're all county.
And Jefferson Pike, as an example, would probably be more of a state project.
Jefferson
a lot
Pike
of state
would be
money
a
on
state
that one. Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Any comments from the budget committee?
Appreciate the staff actually working on a zero-based budget and making our job pretty simple. I think you guys did a good job. I move to approve.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Water pit regulations, huh?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. You'll recall, as part of the 2010 work plan, we identified temporary resource extraction as one of the items we were going to look into. Basically, this is what you're seeing before you today. We've decided to call it borrow pits. I think it more aptly describes what it is we're talking about. But along those, with that introduction, I will say that temporary resource extraction is something that we do deal with on a fairly routine basis. It's this type of situation where they do go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and they are required to get a Type 2 conditional use permit. However, there really aren't any specific regulations that deal with them. They're handled on a case-by-case basis. Some of the conditions may vary between them. And we're trying to come up with something that's a little more standardized for borrow pit regulations. And that's what we've been working on this. And we have this before you today for your review. Basically, what we would recommend doing is that we add a new section to section 7.04, which is our temporary use regulations, and we would create a new category for what are called borrow pits. There'd be a definition, as you see, borrow pits, an area from which soil or other unconsolidated materials removed to be used without further processing as fill for activities such as landscaping, building construction, highway construction, and maintenance. Along with that definition, we would recommend the following criteria for these type applications at the Board of Zoning Appeals. Again, a boundary survey being required to be submitted along with the application. Borrow pits actually have setback requirements included in here, minimum 50 feet from all property lines and 150 feet from any residential property line. We would also have a limit there as to how much a borrow pit could occupy of the property. We'd propose 25% of any lot where it's under 10 acres and no more than 10% of any lot where the lot is 10 acres or larger. Drainage and erosion control plan would be submitted and approved by the county engineer prior to any activities. A road bond for an amount to be determined by the county engineer shall be submitted prior to any activities. Of course, also a reclamation plan would be submitted and approved. Prior to excavation, the owner or operator would have to obtain all federal, state, local permits, not limited to, land disturbance or anything required by the stormwater management regulations for Rutherford County. Unless otherwise specified, we would allow them to be valid for 6 months with a one-time 3-month extension approved by the planning director administratively. They wouldn't have to go back to the BZA for that. No excavation or blasting in association with borrow pit operations shall take place on any property except between the hours of sunrise and sunset. That way we try to keep a little bit of a time frame on their actual excavating. They'd have to put dust and erosion control measures in place to mitigate any problems with that. We'd also with this, the owner and the operator of the borrow pit would be jointly responsible for compliance with the requirements of the section. We would require the licenses to be issued to the operator, and the owners of the land would get a copy of that from the operator. And along with that, this kind of goes with the reclamation plan, but within 9 months after completion of extraction or the termination, all equipment, vehicles, machinery, and debris, whatnot, shall be removed from the subject property. And within 6 months after completion or termination of the permit, the restoration plan, or what we're calling the reclamation plan, what's called the reclamation plan, shall be completed by the property owner operator, and the permit would become void. So that's what we're proposing. Again, this is just kind of we've talked about amongst staff. We've had our building codes look at it, as well as our engineering staff. We're pretty comfortable with what we have here, but we'd like to open it up to you for any comments or suggestions that you may have.
What about an existing one that's out here now and it doesn't meet these regulations?
Well, they would just be grandfathered. Yeah.
Grandfathered.
Mhm.
On the definition, it says material is removed to be used. Removed from where? Removed from the site, removed from, I know that right now a farmer, somebody can go out there and move some dirt from here to there if they want to dig a pond or bury some rocks or something like that, and I hope that would still be
I think that's our intent, and maybe we just need to.
As long as the soil isn't, or the material isn't leaving the site. Is that?
That's pretty much what our intent
what your
was. Now, we
intent
probably could clarify that a little bit by remove from the property or something like that.
Because I hate
Yeah,
to
that
be
might-
every time somebody wants to go out and, clean their pond out or something like that, they have to come up here and get a extrication permit or something like that, as long as the dirt's not, or the soil or material's not.
Yeah, and that's how we handle it
Okay,
now, basically.
as long as that's
yeah.
clarified.
Yeah, we can clarify that.
How many of these things do we have?
How many did you say over the list?
Since the early 90s, we've processed about close to 90 temporary resource extraction permits. So it's a healthy number.
So, do you have any time limits on them now? In other words,
Just what's granted at the Board of Zoning Appeals. Nothing standardized. They may come in and say we just need 3, 6. Typically, it's 6 months. I would say is a lot of them. But
like for blasting,
oh, you mean like during the what times of the day? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was wondering if we should look at like from 8 to 5 or something like that. Where
Well, we thought sunrise to sunset might be better because what we were thinking is, of course, with time changes and things, it just provides something a little more. You always know when the sun's going to rise and when it's going to fall. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're not you know, if that's what the will of the commission was, I don't think we're adverse to that.
I don't
The last,
know,
yeah, the last time one was approved, I think they did it from sunrise to sunset, I think was what it was, if I remember right.
I just know if I had one of these coming next door to me, I'd kinda like to know them,
Sure.
at least kids be going to school before they start blasting.
Of that 90, I would think a very small portion would be actually doing blasting and rock. I mean, it's usually people moving some dirt off the side. A neighbor got a temporary permit to cut a knoll down where it was keeping his farm from draining into from draining correctly, and he sold topsoil for about 6 months and got it all smoothed out, and the county came out and inspected it, and he had seeded it and everything, and it all worked just fine. And but there wasn't a stick of dynamite involved in that, you know.
Well, like when they were building 840, there's a few down through there, you know. Going through the state, there wasn't any reclamation plans within the state, because some of them, I thought, put that within their plan that they were going to, you know, I guess smooth it over after the pit was taken out, because they were borrowing rock at that point to build the base for 840.
Yeah. Now, and Mr. Corbett, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding of TCA, state law, that anything associated with a state project is exempt from local zoning regulations. So they could have, whatever the state requires them to do, you know, we don't have a whole lot of say in that. We ran into that at the BZA a year or so ago with a.
Okay, so none of those really came through us.
That's
then.
correct.
Right.
Okay. So these others, there was no, out of this 90, I guess, that we've been through, there's no reclamation plan that's been attached to those.
I'd say a majority of those, as Mr. Jordan would indicate, were farm ponds. People wanted to build a 2 or 3 acre farm pond, and they wanted to know if they could either sell the dirt or maybe take it to another piece of property. The way it works, anytime that you leave the parcel that's on and go across public highway, then we require a permit, because we also put a bond on that road because of the load on the road, tearing up the road and stuff.
Do we now, on like 4 and 5, for a guy digging a lake on his place, and does he have a drainage and erosion control plan must be submitted, or the road bond, is that now?
That's correct. They come in and talk to us, and I'm not requiring these farmers to put an engineering plan. What we'll do is we'll sit down and we work on it together, and then when he finishes, this pond, usually I have 3-to-1 slopes, and they'll put grass and stuff on there. If it's rock they're taking out where you got sheer walls and stuff, of course we won't do the 3-to-1 slopes on those, or to require the grass, because they won't grow in the rock. But we work with the farmer, and like I say, a majority of those have been farmers. We've been a few who just wanted to sell the dirt, but still.
If this were approved, any of this could be addressed through the BZA for variances. Like I would take it like no more than 10% of any lot where the area is greater than 10 acres. If somebody's got a 12 acres of land, they want to put in a 3 acre lake, that's going to be more than 10%. They could go to the BZA and get a variant for that.
They could ask for one for that. Yeah.
So he's got a 300 acre lot and a 10 acre lake.
That'd be okay, because he'd be allowed 30 acres of a disturbed area. So. Yeah. Now, again, if he's keeping all the dirt on his own property, he wouldn't even have to come to us. I mean, as far as this is concerned. So.
What we are asking them to do, even if they're just on their properties, come in and notify us, and we try to work to make sure that whatever they're doing is not hindering the flow across their land. We will give them a land disturbance permit with no fee involved. What that's for is because as our inspectors go around the county, they see these types of operations going on. They don't have any notice for them, so they end up calling somebody. They have to go out and check. And if we can get them to come in up front, then we just basically have a list. You know, Mr. Smith, we know is building the pond out here. He's going to put the dirt in the back, and we've kind of looked at it.
Time-wise, okay, we're taking this and studying it until our what?
Well, if it what we're asking, if you're comfortable with it, we could schedule it for public hearing in March. If you'd like some more time to kind of look it over, I mean, there's no real rush on it. We could talk about it again at the March Day meeting and then schedule it for April. But if you're okay with it, we would just ask you to go ahead and put it on March's public hearing agenda.
Correct.
What you wish is March, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mike has a question. Mike.
Yes, sir.
This U definition, is that definition of the bar pit now, or is that new definition?
It's a new definition. There's not one right now.
There's none at all now?
No, sir.
Okay, so that, where it says without further processing, they wouldn't be able to haul stone to another site and crush it, is that correct?
Well, they wouldn't be able to crush it on site, I think is what we're talking about.
Why would they be allowed to haul it off-site? Every time they do that, we're losing 17 cents a ton severance tax.
Mike, I'm not sure if I understand what you're asking. But what this definition is intended to do, basically, what we don't want to see on site is if they're on the property and they get their permit to do it. You know, if they want to haul the rock, they get the rock, stick it in a truck, and leave. We're just saying we don't want it crushed on the actual property where the borrow pit is located. They can take it somewhere else to be crushed.
Why would that be legal? If you're charging, every rock crusher in this county has to pay 17 cents a ton severance tax. You're letting them avoid the severance tax, which we get a portion of.
Good point.
You're trying to keep them from setting up an actual quarry, though.
That's basically the intent.
So
is-
realistically, they're
right.
not gonna haul it somewhere else and then grind it there.
Mhm.
Headed at the next site, I would,
If it did, then
They do
they'd
that.
have to pay 17 cents, wouldn't
That
they'd
is
pay
done.
17 cents wherever they're going. If it's within the county, they'd pay 17 cents there.
Not if nobody oversees how much they're crushing.
Because they're just bringing it
Nobody's
in,
weighing
not-
the stones.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, nobody's gonna be overseeing it when it's out there on somebody's vacant lot at the same time.
That's what I'm saying. I think it should be made illegal to do that.
I'm not sure I follow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I follow that.
Okay, I've got a bar pit.
Uh-huh.
I'll sell to some other construction company. They haul that stone out to their site where they're putting in a Walmart or whatever, set up a crusher and crush the stone. I don't feel like it's fair to other businesses that have to pay a tax to the county. And they are not paying any tax. We're losing tax money every time that happens.
So what you're saying?
And what you're saying, there ought to be some wording in here to make sure that's not happening on the stone end of it.
That's right.
Well, like the state ones that they were doing that they're exempt from ours. I mean, they were crushing on site.
I'm not talking about state.
I
I'm talking-
understand, but what I'm saying, they were though. They were crushing
Yeah.
on site.
They're allowed to do that by state law,
Yeah.
but I don't think they should be able to do that
And
unless it's
remove
a
it.
state project.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think before we put this on for public hearing, I'd like to see Doug and Mike get together. And I know, I mean, because I understand what Mike's saying and I understand what Doug's saying, but where we can kind of put these two heads together and kind of figure out and what's going to be the best for this.
Yeah,
There
we
may
can.
be some possibilities here, and that way, and instead of trying to piecemeal it right here and now, let staff go back and look at some other options possibly.
Sounds like to me you might need to put some wording in there on the rock, at least on the rock end of it, where there isn't, you know, once it leaves there, it cannot be reprocessed. I don't know how you do that within this, but that's sort of what you're saying. But it'd be all right to remove the rock, fill with it somewhere, but you don't want it reprocessed
Right. You know, it says.
there
without-
or anywhere else.
Right, it says without further processing, and that should be made specific for on-site or off-site.
Yeah.
And we can do
If you're
that.
gonna look at that, also look at the definition, make sure it
Definition, yeah.
exempts farmers from using the soil on their own site, you know,
Mhm.
which you said you thought was the intent anyway.
There's
Right.
nothing about this that would prevent a landowner from crushing rocks for his own use on his own property, right?
That's not the intent of it, no. I mean, I think, yeah,
I don't think it'll do that, will it?
I don't think so. Because if they're going to be on their own property, then
Yeah,
they wouldn't even be coming to us
Use on
anyway.
their own property
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, I'm not against that, but I don't think it should be able to haul it to another location and crush it.
Okay, let's look at it.
That's fine. Yeah, we'll March. Yeah, I mean, we'll bring it back March day meeting. Is
Okay,
what we'll do. Yeah.
day meeting.
Mhm.
Okay, all right. All right, what else?
Well, I think that's we're on to the signage presentation. Okay. All right. We have a little presentation for you here today that we're going to go through just to take a few minutes to go through. Dale, would you mind hitting? Yeah, or something. Thank you. Now I'm going to give you the disclaimer. This we were having some technical glitches with this when we first tested it. We got it worked out. Then it started working like we thought it was going to work. So there's no telling what's going to happen when I start hitting the button here when we get to the videos part of it anyway. But anyway, we'd like to talk a little bit about signage in Rutherford County. You know, this is something we've been talking about on and off for the last several months. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of these images that we found are not local examples. A good example is this one right here, although I kind of like that one. That's pretty cool. But we got some other interesting ones in here to kind of keep you entertained a little bit.
Those are our palm trees that's down on the corner?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Before we get started, though, I'd like to thank, as always, like to thank my staff. I know Danielle did a whole lot. She found a whole lot of these pictures. Eric, of course, was trying to help me out with the technical aspect of it today, and with him and Danielle, I think we got it working. Elizabeth is always good for the research and helping us out with everything. I do appreciate everything they do. The four things I kind of want to talk about today is I want to talk about our current regulations in Rutherford County, go into some different forms of illumination, what we're currently permitted. Also start talking a little bit about dynamic signage, and we'll kind of get into that, what that is, and then some of the goals of this project. So current regulations we'll talk about first. The Rutherford County zoning resolution breaks down signage really into 5 primary categories. We have ground signs, wall, projecting, graphic, and directional signs. There's also separate categories for temporary signage and also for off-premise or what we call billboard signs. Ground signs, and these definitions that you're going to see on the bottom here all come out of our existing regulations. They're self-supporting signs resting on or supported by a means of poles, standards, or any other type of base on the ground. This is what you typically see. You know, like in this example, you've got 2 poles. Here you've got the one, and this is what some people call a freestanding wall sign. Not necessarily poles, it's just in the ground. It's basically a wall in the ground, if you will. Wall signs are pretty much like they sound, any sign that's mounted parallel to a building facade or other vertical building surface. And the most important aspect is they cannot project more than 18 inches from the wall surface. You can kind of see, you know, on these corners, they've got some on either side, very large letters and a display right here, Old Time Pottery. This is not ours, and I'm not sure exactly what business that is right there. Projecting signs. These are signs that form an angle with the building and extend from the building and are supported by the building. We don't see a whole lot of these really in Rutherford County and just in incorporated areas. You typically see these kind of signs more in like downtown areas, that kind of thing. If you look around the square downtown area, you'll see some of these type signs. Graphic signs, signs which is an integral part of the building facade. The sign is painted directly on, carved in, or otherwise permanently embedded in the facade. This is probably the best example of a graphic sign. This is the Harley-Davidson, the Bumpus Harley-Davidson right there on Northwest Broad Street. There were several issues with this when it was originally built. However, the city did change the regulations and allowed those type signage. But this is not attached to the wall. This is actually built as part of the wall. And you can see here, these are kind of painted into the wall. This here, again, you can kind of see some of these old signs here are made as part of the building facade itself. We don't count those as ground signs when they're like that. We actually call those graphic signs. Directional signs. Now, our definition that we have, you know, designate signs designating the location of a community or an institution of public, quasi-public nature, or the opening of an event of public interest, not including signs, real estate signs, basically. When I think of directional signs, this is really more what we're thinking about, these kind of things, kind of telling you where things are. As part of our project, we would kind of overview, good gracious, sorry, kind of revamp our definitions, easy for me to say, but, and kind of make this more of what is expected. This is really what we're wanting to see more for directional signage, but this gives you an idea of what they're talking about here. Temporary signs. This is personally one of my favorites right here. No temporary signs need a permit. There you go. These are the kind of signs, obviously, they're temporary in nature. Any sign, banner, pennant, valance, or whatever intended to be displayed for a short period of time. These type signs here, the coming soon, are probably the ones we're most familiar with. These portable signs right here, sometimes you'll see them lit with the big arrows on them. You'll see those. Banner signs, you'll see these a lot on multifamily type establishments. Off-premises and billboards. Any type of advertising sign that has more than 100 square feet of display surface, which is either erected on the ground or attached to or supported by a building or structure. Of course, what you're seeing here, these are typical examples. I think people get more creative with these things as time goes on. This one's really just entertaining, if nothing else. But this is kind of what we see. Now, again, these are none of these are local examples here. So, but this gives you an idea of what we're talking about with billboard off-premise signage. Some general requirements for signage. Section 2003 of our zoning resolution contains a table of permitted uses, permitted signs, excuse me. The size of ground signs is determined by the zoning district and the type of road it's located on, either arterial, collector, or residential street. Basically, the higher classification of street, the more square footage you're allowed. Graphic and wall signs are determined by the building width itself. Projecting signage, again, which is similar to wall signs, again, are determined by the zoning district and the type of the road. And billboard signage is limited to 775 square feet in area. And rather than go into all the different temporary signage regulations, there are several and they vary. So that just gives you just a quick overview. As part of this project, Elizabeth did some research with our codes department over the last few years just to get an idea of the signs by type per year. You can see most of the signs that we do get applications for are of the ground sign variety, followed fairly close, not too close, but the next highest category is temporary, and then wall signage. Don't see many billboards. Actually, there was none in 2008 and only one in 2009. And projecting signs, again, was just not something we see a lot of in the county. So even that one to me is kind of surprising. Typical size of ground signs. You can see most of them are this red, 11 to 24 square feet. You see the next group here, 22% at 25 to 32, then kind of goes over here, 10 square feet or less, and then the 35, and then really anything bigger than 50 square feet. And typically those require variances. So as a percentage of the overall whole, it's not a lot. Typical size of wall signs, again, you see about the same, 50 square feet to, actually that's 50 to 33 square feet. The largest category is this one, 32 to 25 square feet. So a fairly good amount. I'd say over half, almost 60% here, you're looking at fall into these two categories. 24 to 11 square feet here, 10 square feet or less. And then again, you have a small percentage that, of course, variances have to be granted for that, but just a small percentage greater than 50 square feet. Purpose of the signage, the vast majority are for commercial purposes. The next highest category are institutional, and Elizabeth, if I remember correctly, said those were all churches, right? Churches, daycares, anything like that would fall under that category. Subdivision entrance signs fall under that, and then industrial, again, we don't see a lot of those, but industrial signage is next. Next, we go into some different forms of illumination. Our current regulations allow 5 different types of illumination. We have general, which is essentially non-illuminated, internal message, internal sign, backlighting, and shielded spotlight. I'm going to go over some examples, but you're not going to see any examples of a general or non-illuminated sign because that's basically what it is. It's a sign that has no lighting, so there's really no sense in giving you any examples of that. But an internal message sign is a sign made of metal, wood, or other material that's not translucent, and the message is cut out of the material and replaced with a translucent material. Best examples are probably here. This is a good example right here, this V. This actually this is a good example. It actually has kind of 2 elements, and we'll talk about this second element here next. But you can kind of see how the letters are actually kind of cut out, and it's not actually you can't see the rest of the lighting behind the letters. Internal sign. The sign is made itself of translucent material with internal lights. These are good examples. Anything like this. And you can kind of see between the two how that portion right there is considered more of an internal sign as opposed to an internal message. You kind of see how that differentiates there. Backlighting, the message is raised beyond both the sign's background and the overlighting sources that illuminate the background. You kind of see all these have the lighting in the back. And shielded spotlight, spotlight specifically directed at the sign. Spotlights are fully shielded, so they are not visible from, it's a typo, sorry, from the streets or adjoining property. So after you have an idea of that, now I'd like to talk a little bit about dynamic signage. For the purposes of our discussion, dynamic signage is going to refer to any display that has changing messages regardless of the means. Okay, so we're not going to differentiate between manual, or we will just give you examples, but we're just going to kind of give it an overview, a broad overview at this point. And there are several types of changeable signs we'll look at: the manual changeable copy, automated changeable copy, multi-vision signs, electronic graphic displays, and video displays. First one are manual changeable displays. This is typically what you see. Of course, we saw a lot of this the last couple of years. You know, just basically somebody has to go out and actually physically move those. Now these are a little different. These look like they're almost flip, like you kind of flip it and the numbers change as you flip. That's a little different than what we typically see. Typically for something like this, what you see is somebody with a big pole or on a ladder go out there with this big old pole and grab the thing and sit it down, put a new one up. As someone who worked at an establishment that had to do that at one point, yeah, that can be real fun, especially when it's freezing rain and cold outside. And not a fun time. Automated changeable copy. You can see that these are in this little GIF file. I also have to kind of give a shout out, if you will, to the city of Murfreesboro. Some of these graphics that you see here actually came from their presentation they made about a year or so ago. I called them up and asked them, these were such good examples, if we could just use these, and they were very helpful and said that they'd be more than happy to let us use that, so I do appreciate them. But you can see that these aren't the type of situation where somebody actually gets up and changes the letters or the numbers. They actually, there's a program somewhere or something where they hit a button and it flips it itself. A good example, I don't know if anybody who travels I-24, when you're going 24 toward Nashville, you may see those lottery signs and the numbers are changing. That's another good example of that. Would like to have gotten a picture of that, but you know, something about pulling over on the highway, they kind of frown on that. so we didn't do that. But that kind of gives you an idea of some automated changeable copy. Multi-vision signs. This is what's called a tri-vision. Every 8-10 seconds or so, there's actually I think there's like 2 or 3 different messages on here. And it's set on a timer, and at one time they all basically kind of flip. And that's what you get, those kind of signs. Now this is where the presentation might just get a little interesting depending on what the computer decides to do when I hit the button. So we'll see here. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the next one. Electronic graphic display. Getting y'all excited for nothing. These are electronic, you know, LED type signage, but they really don't change. This is, of course, time and temperature. This one would change, obviously, whenever the time temp changes. But gas station signs right through here, of course, these are the typical ones that we see for those type of signs. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This is electronic graphic display, a changeable display. This is actually, we took this ourselves. This is actually in Nashville. And you can, if you do a timer, it's about every 8 seconds, you'll see that billboard change. And there's really no limit to the number of messages you can put on that. But you can see that that's an example of an electronic changeable display. This is another example. Now, that you see that in the background when the letters aren't there. It's not doing that in the field. Okay, when you look at that, you don't. That's not how. There's something with the camera that did that. I don't understand why, but you don't see the little thingy shaking around in the background. Another example. This is actually on I-24 in Laverne. Again, that little flickering in the background. In the field, when you're looking at it, it's not doing that.
You got a camera in the budget?
Actually, Danielle let us use hers. And I appreciated it. But And finally, this is another. This is actually right down the road from that last one. Again, the video. It's kind of strange. This number here in the field does not blink. What blinks is this. This goes from 271 to 265 or whatever it was. That was actually changing back and forth, but it would they weren't blinking like that, and that number again was static. But this does show some static and changeable text. So I think it was like a premium and diesel, if I remember right, were what the categories were. So. And then this last one's a full motion video display. This is almost like watching television on a billboard, basically. Okay. So there's a lot of issues to consider when you're looking at dynamic signage. First of all, the type of dynamic signage that you want, you'd like us to research. Of course, we want to look at changeable copy. Do we want to look at just static text? Do we want to look at the full motion video? Do we want to look at scrolling text? Those kind of things. Also, another aspect of this is how much of the sign area do you want to have, if we do get into dynamic signage, how much of that sign area do we want to have for that dynamic message? And some examples here, and these are local examples that I'm going to show you. The overall area of this sign is 75 square feet. Okay, the LED panel area, which is this area right here, not just the LED portion, but this whole blue area right here, is 18 square feet. So as a percentage of LED signage, it's only 24%. Another example, the overall sign area is 189 square feet, which would include this too. The LED panel area is 30 square feet. Now the LED area itself, this little portion here, is only 9 square feet. So the percentage of this little area to the overall sign is about 4 3/4%. This is, of course, Sloan's over there on Northwest Broad. And this is a time and temperature sign. You kind of see the times here, and I took another shot when it was the temperature. The overall sign area is 300 square feet. The LED area is 10, so you're only looking at about 3 square feet. Now, something else to keep in mind, well, let me just do this last one here. This is not a digital one, but this is just a manual changeable copy. Of course, this area here, the overall sign's 100 square feet. Changeable copy area, which is this area through here, is 21 square feet, so it gives you a percentage of 21. Now, something to keep in mind, of course, the signs that you see in the city are a lot larger than what you would see in the county. So although this looks appropriate right here as far as scale is concerned, you know, when you're only looking at this point at 50 square feet maximum for a lot of these signs, you know, 21, 25%, you can see the numbers are a little bit different. And unfortunately, we didn't really have that many digital examples to look at in the county, but that kind of gives you an idea of something that is a concern. Also, some other issues, zones to allow dynamic signage. Is it something we just want to allow in commercial areas or industrial areas? Is it something that maybe we wouldn't mind seeing in some residential areas for institutional type uses like daycare, schools, churches, those kind of things? And there's other regulations that you can consider, such as distance requirements between these types of signage, a static or a changeable message. Again, do you allow it to change? And if you do allow it to change, what kind of duration are you looking at for that? And then also, do you want to see scrolling text, or would you rather just see non-scrolling? So that's kind of our overall, these last slide here is kind of our overall goals of the project. Of course, overall, we'd like to modernize our regulations. We also like to explore the use of dynamic signage and the benefits and the drawbacks to that. And also another issue, we call it content neutrality. Again, this kind of goes hand in hand with modernizing our regulations, just making sure that we're not trying to base our regulations on the content of the sign, making sure that, you know, we're treating all signs equally. So with that, that's kind of our presentation. Just open up for questions, comments, direction, you know, but.
I've got a comment. Doug, have you entertained where, I know in the past, like when we made some changes in regulations that, like the engineers and you know, people like that have kind of give input, like an ad hoc committee. Have you entertained a thing where you might be able to get someone that does billboard from a billboard company, from the business side of it, from some of the signs that you talked about, the changeable signs, kind of get some input from them?
We have at this point we're still kind of at the beginning of this part. Now we've already looked at our regulations and made a lot of what we think are good changes to the regs. Not that we've brought forward yet, but we always anticipated bringing in the sign industry and those kind of people to the process. Now I don't know if it's in a committee necessarily, but we did want, but maybe like a kind of like a stakeholder meeting kind of thing, kind of say, okay, this is what we want to do. What do y'all think? And you know, from there.
Because they've been down this road before. They, you know, because we're not the first person to, our first government to change sign regulations.
Right.
And, you know, there's no sense in reinventing the wheel when there's a lot of people that's got a lot of good input on both sides of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, after you'll recall a few months ago, we actually brought you an amendment, just a small amendment to our sign regulation stating, you know, if it's not permitted expressly and it's prohibited. After that was passed, I ended up getting some phone calls about it. People's kind of worried about, well, what is it you just did? And I'm like, look, we haven't changed anything. You're still able to do today what you were able to do yesterday. After I explained it, they were fine. But we did receive some calls, so they, you know, they're watching out there.
I received some of them too.
Okay. So, but yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of information.
Yes.
Oh, excuse me. How we going with?
Well, I guess that's kind of what we were kind of wanting from you, is just any direction. I mean, is dynamic signage something you'd like us to investigate a little more? Again, there are positive aspects to it, but I think there's drawbacks too, especially in some of the text where you look at the movable, changeable text and that kind of thing. I think there are issues that do need to be considered. But at this point, we're just kind of wanting to let you know where it is we're going, first of all, and what our overall goals here. But at the same time, we're hoping to get a little direction from you as far as, you know, what you're comfortable with, what you're not, what you'd like us to explore and not, and those kind of things.
I have a couple of questions, Doug. On the dynamic signs, if that is something that we begin to research, would it be appropriate for us to be able to limit the number of those that would be permitted on any given road? Because, like, for example, I know you're talking about maybe we only allow them in commercial areas, but I don't want to be Las Vegas where every single business gets one. I mean, and maybe that's a question for Josh. I mean, if we allow them for one, do we have to allow them for all, or is it something where you can say, you know, we'll allow a maximum of this in this zoning area? I don't know.
I'll try to make a stab at it, and then Josh, if you'd like to chime in, you can feel free. My personal opinion on that is, I think if you're going to allow it, it's going to be difficult to tell person A over here they can do it, and then tell person B, who may be just down the road, that they can't. I think you might run into some issues there. That just doing some of the research we've already done, that is something that some folks have run into. Is it's almost like a race to see who gets the sign permit first. You know, you get two people who are next door. You know, person A comes in and gets a sign permit. Well, then person B, if you have some kind of a distance requirement, isn't allowed to get it. You know, there may be some possible issues there. That's my personal take on that.
Yeah, and I guess that's just my concern for researching it. Is, I mean, I think there's a place for them, and I think there are places where they look completely acceptable. I just don't know if they would look acceptable at every single business along a certain, you know, stretch of road. So.
I noticed one of the signs you had up there had a gas price that was an LED. Then beneath it had changeable letters
Yeah.
for what was on sale.
Had both.
And
It was diesel.
It's like one of those
that's
type.
one,
Yeah.
and there's another one, the one you just went past,
That one,
and that
yeah.
one there.
Mhm.
And I don't see why that changeable letter part couldn't be LED if we just limit how rapidly it changed. Because you've got somebody going out there to change those letters every day or every time the special changes, and I don't have a problem with it all being, you know, electronic, as long as it's not if we, you know, say it only changes every 4 minutes or every twice a day or whatever. I don't like it ought to be Las Vegas, but I don't see point of staying in the Stone Age and somebody out there would want to stick with a suction cup when putting the things up in the rain. I mean, if it's going to say something, it's going to be changeable. Why not let them do it inside on their keyboard?
Well, one thing I've got to say is we got to be very careful in what we do. I was fortunate enough or unfortunate enough, I don't know, back when I worked for the city of Murfreesboro in the Building Codes Department, helped write the sign ordinance for the second time or whatever time at that point, you know, and I think it's been written a couple more times since then. And one of the things that you look at, and the business folks look at, and the sign companies look at, is that you know, we're demanding taxes but they're also demanding customers to come to their businesses and do business. So there's a line there, and it's a movable line that you have to work with. We all want the same thing as far as not be cluttered up and unsightly and stuff like that. But then you have to look at the safety aspect of it too. And one of the main things in the ordinance that we looked at was the flashing, blinking, undulating, type stuff that draws your attention off from driving.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where these dynamic signs, I think they're called now, or they used to not let your billboards and the Tri-Vision type deal even happen. One time we had fireworks with the little spinner red things that looked like they were, exploding on there. Well, it draws attention, and that everybody's wanting to draw their attention to their business or their product that they're trying to sell, of course. But the main thing is, and as well as cell phones and everything else, is getting your attention off of what you're supposed to be doing when you're driving, and that's driving and not running into somebody and driving the speed limit and all that. So all I'm saying is we have to be very careful with what we're doing here. I think there's a big hoopla about changing the prices, electronically. That's not flashing, blinking, undulating, all that sort of stuff. Now, as fast as we think the gas prices were going up at one time, and they may be going up now, but they're not going up that fast to where you actually see them change, Sure
felt like that sometimes.
Yeah, they've gone up 2 or 3 times a day sometimes, but I mean, they're not just sitting there flashing and blinking. And that's the main thing I think that's been a problem. These new television type, or it looks like a television, it's an ongoing type message or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the issue. But our legalities on that, if what can we do, what can we not do? I don't know what the city of Murfreesboro is actually, and I don't want to copy them, but there's some good points. There's some good points there that they've got in their ordinance that's been proven, either good things or bad things, and already tested.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the only thing we have to question here is these dynamic signs and what's the legalities there that we can do or can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else should be pretty standardized, and what's already there is working fine. As far as updating our ordinance, I think we need to update our ordinance. But I like to see what maybe Franklin, Murfreesboro, some other cities that are growing like us, Davidson County, what are they doing, and really kind of take the best of the best out and composite and put into our ordinance.
Jeff, your comments?
Yeah, I just wanted, I've got another meeting I've got to get to and I have to leave, but I just want the staff, as much work as they put in it, to come back with a recommendation so we can look at it and be a starting point for us to go to. And, the city of Murfreesboro, Steve said we didn't want to copy it. I'm not sure about that, but there's a lot of work that's already been gone into it.
Some of it.
Some things we've learned through the years is that whatever we put in place is not going to be a forever thing.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be something that we can adjust and change as times change.
Mm-hmm.
We've looked at our zoning ordinances as a perfect example of that. It needs updating, and we're updating it, and so all of these things will need to be that too. But we need a starting point, and that's where I think we ought to lean on the staff and come back with whatever their recommendation is, and then we can begin to look at it from there.
Okay, very good. That's what we'll do.
Yes,
I just have one more thing I wanted to add, and I think I'd mentioned this before, Doug, when you brought this up, is that I would like for there to be some section in there where we look at regulating just the use of neon. I've seen that lately where windows are trimmed out in neon. It's not a sign, but it is very distracting, and so I'd like for there to be some element in there where we look at that.
Okay.
That was put in the Murfreesboro sign orders too. You might want to take a look at it. It was like
I remember
3
that,
linear
actually,
feet per building foot of frontage, not to exceed X amount of linear frontage. So, like if you had a 30-foot building, you were only allowed 90 feet of neon. So, and it was considered a sign.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll look and we'll include something in there about that.
Okay. The conditional use permits, they have a different type of, will they have we rewriting the regulations for those too, or do they have a different type? And I know there's some limit to
You're talking about zoning, just general zoning issues?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want a neon sign or a flashing sign on a conditional use permit on a residential house that we allow a conditional use for a daycare, for instance, especially if it's next door to other residents,
Yeah, and there'll be issues like that where if we're going to allow certain signages for, in residential areas, I would only recommend it being for those uses that are approved with conditional use permits in residential areas, like
You can incorporate
daycare,
something
and
along
institutional
that
type uses, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions? If Mr. Benson Winrow was here, I was gonna give him spell adjourn, since he's a spelling
Just,
teacher.
just along these, just real
County
quick,
engineer report.
yeah, along these lines, we're actually going to be having a speaker come to give a presentation about signage issues. Dr. Eric Damian Kelly, will be coming March 22nd. We'll be getting some flyers out to you shortly, just to kind of whet your appetite on that. And one of the issues we asked him to discuss was digital signage. So, but I just wanted to let you know about that. So, I have nothing further.
Dale, you okay?
Okay.
Motion to
Motion to adjourn.
second, all in favor, say aye.